Hello and welcome to Table Talk. I'm your host, Karen Wilson, and we have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about the real estate market and everything that goes into that. It's very competitive and very busy right now. I have Miss Terry Bryan here, who is a local agent, a real estate agent, and Ryan Moore, who's going to talk to us about the closing process, which we need a lawyer for, Ryan. That can be a very complicated part and something you don't think about. That's the not so sexy stuff that goes on after the fact.
I'm the boring one in this transaction.
Well, Terry, let's start with you, and what someone needs to look for when they're searching for an agent, because that can be the key to getting the property you want.
Absolutely. We have a lot of great firms here, a lot of great real estate agents that are local. There's a lot to choose from. It's kind of like some other things. There's maybe one on every corner in each county. And a lot of people have family, friends, relatives, or whatever. But when you go to look for that real estate agent, you want to look for someone that is able to get you to the closing table, and you have the confidence in that real estate agent. You want the foundation of that is trust. So just building that relationship with that agent is very important. Sometimes, I've had calls from people that didn't know me, I didn't know them, and so we immediately started that relationship of building trust with one another, getting to know each other, kind of figuring out what the goals are so we can accomplish those goals. It is a very competitive market out there, and so you want somebody that's going to get you to the very end to help you accomplish those goals. And again, there's a lot of great ones to choose from. I would say definitely somebody that communicates well. That's something that I pride myself on for that, because I know how I want to be treated as a client. So I try very hard to communicate with clients, because they want to know what's going on, and how things are up and down and up and down. So, you try to just keep in close communication, and that just kind of gives a security to the client, So I would say, foundationally wise, you want to look for someone you can trust. Look for someone that is just passionate about what they do to help you get through the humps and the hurdles, and because there will be things that do come up. And then somebody that you can communicate well with.
Mm-hmm. Well, you bring that up, and I think about the process and everything as someone buying is their whole life revolves around when this move or when this change is going to happen, from changing school systems to churches to what community you're going to be in. So there's a lot riding on that transaction there. So lots of questions, I'm sure. When's this going to happen?
There are, and the real estate agent is the one who kind of carries the load of that, because there are a lot of moving parts. We've got, I'm currently working with some clients that are moving from out of town, and here they're trying to transition schools, they're transitioning jobs, and it's emotional. I didn't know before I went into real estate how emotional that process is. I mean, it's just a very emotional process of just kind of letting go of where you are and going into the new. It's scary. A lot of people are fearful because you're fearful of the unknown. And so it just helps to have that person, and I think that's what a real estate agent does in many ways, is just take you by the hand and say, okay, I got you. Like, I've got you. I'll take care of you. I've been through this. I've done this. I've seen this. Let's go and let's do that.
So, Ryan, when you got into the legal business, did you think you would have to become basically a real estate expert? Of course, that's kind of your family's background anyway.
Sure.
So,
well, I do like title work. We talk about from, the courtroom to the closing table. And Terry does a lot of transactions where she will list a property, and within that property there are leases. So it's an investment property, and when Terry sells that property, that lease goes with the property. So a lot of people think, okay, it's a new buyer, does my lease terminate? And the answer is no, and that lease goes and runs with the property. So if you've got a year lease and Terry sells a piece of property and there's 6 months left on that lease, that buyer assumes the lease, and that's very common with investment properties.
Mm-hmm. And that's a popular thing right now. People
It is.
buying real estate that's rental property as
Sure.
a retirement investment or just a life investment. So I never
Absolutely.
thought about that.
Yes.
You got to think about your renters. So
Another thing we have to think about in this booming real estate market is foreclosures. And when someone buys a piece of property on the courthouse steps, it is their responsibility, Karen, Terry, not the bank's responsibility to get that tenant out, because they're an owner now. The bank's not the owner. You've sold the property, a trustee's deed has been conveyed, and the owner now assumes the liability for getting the tenant out.
Okay.
So you've got a foreclosed piece of property, a buyer defaulted on a note, a foreclosure sale was done on the courthouse steps, it was duly advertised, the sale was cried, the transaction happened, money has exchanged hands, that trustee's deed has been recorded. Now it's the new owner's responsibility to get that tenant out, because we know a foreclosure is going to wipe out any type of tenancy agreement. And Terry is real good about explaining that to her clients.
right, yeah, that's a complicated
It can
part
be.
of it, but yeah, and kind of a little bit unpleasant, but you
Yes.
guys do a great job handling that. So, we're hearing so much about real estate right now being kind of a seller's market, and people are looking to list their homes that previously had not even considered that. So what does the process look like whenever you decide, hey, I'm going to get in on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, it is a seller's market, meaning there's more buyers out there than there are sellers. Okay, so you might have several people making an offer on one home, and that is very common to have multiple offers. And so when sellers are thinking, okay, well, now might be a good time to sell my home since I've been thinking about that. So what I always tell people is, if you want to sell your home in this market, there's a possible good chance that you're going to make some money off your home in this market. However, make sure you know where you're going, because you might make money on this end, but it may cost you on the buying end. So just have a plan. That's the most important thing, is just have a plan, know where you're going, know what you're doing. But in the selling process, real estate agents in general, they'll go meet with their clients and they will talk to them, try to see what their goals are, what it is that they want to do. And they'll go through like the listing process, have photography come out. It's really important, like whenever you're looking at a firm or an agent, ask them about their marketing plan and what they do for the marketing, because marketing is so important in this industry. And so just ask about that marketing plan and find out, if they do professional photography, drone videos, the 3D walkthrough tours. Those 3D walkthrough tours and the videos are very important to our out-of-state clients. So there are a lot of people that's migrating, into this area, and just Tennessee in general, because of, different things. But like if they're in California or if they're in another state somewhere, it actually allows them to kind of take that tour through the home to get a really good look at that home. And so then ask how your marketing department gets everything out, what that kind of looks like. So I think that's very important in the listing process. Now, as far as like getting your home ready, so once you decide, hey, I'm going to sell this home, I think I'm going to just do it, we're going to go for it, we're going to try it. So it's time to get the home ready. Well, I always try to prepare people that everybody has clutter and everybody has stuff, because you live there. You've got, people's got family and kids and things you're collecting and things you're doing. So, just clean off those countertops, clean off, so everybody wants to see counter space. Clean those things up. I tell my clients, for safety purposes, I would take personal photos down, just, so that, people are not seeing all the personal photos, that kind of thing. Put your animals up when showing, even though I love them.
Oh, right, but yeah.
I love them. And I'll tell you I'll tell you a little quick story. I went into a house just last week, and love these clients. They were so sweet. And this little baby goat and a diaper and a onesie met me at the door. So I was like, my heart was like, oh my goodness, is that not the cutest thing I've ever seen? So I was trying to think about their house, but but I couldn't because I was so distracted by this little cute goat that was just hopping around. So yeah, so even for distraction purposes. So
Well,
yeah.
and two, you've got some people that do not, there's allergies and things like that, so they
Absolutely.
don't want to think about your
Yeah.
big dog running through the house.
Yeah, and absolutely. Actually did have this happen before. They went into a client's home, and they had some great, wonderful dogs. And of course, they've never got bitten, but that dog, for whatever reason, didn't like me. And so he went for me, and he didn't get me, thank goodness. But yeah, so you just don't think about like them they may not like somebody else, even though they love the owner.
Right,
So
we're on their turf.
yeah,
so, yeah.
They're strangers coming in. And so even when we're showing houses, we always tell people to put your dogs up or take them with you while we're showing the house, just because if people hear those real deep, dark, barks, people might not stay in the house and look at it as long. So
Well, and I've often wondered, a lot of people will want to purchase a house and just gut it and start from scratch. And then
Yeah.
you've got other people that wants to see it's been taken care of.
Yeah.
Do you repaint? Do you, what do you do to get it ready? Or do you leave it as is?
well, and that's that in that initial conversation with that seller, that's what we look at, because there's just some people not in a place to where they can go remodel and gut a kitchen and, to get it ready to show, and they may have to just sell it as is. We do have some people that's, motivated, and they have people that can help them to do whatever they're planning to do, any kind of remodel, painting, or whatever to get it done. So that's really a client decision on what they can do. Some people I've had some elderly clients that they just couldn't get it done. That was just too tough for them. But I've had some other clients that said, hey, we're going to rip this out and do this and paint this. I will say this, the most important rooms in your home, like when you're coming into a house, people are always looking at the kitchen. So any improvements you can make to that kitchen, anything improvements you can make to your bathrooms and master bedrooms, those are just, people go straight to those to see what those are.
Yeah, it is. That's as we watch HGTV,
Oh,
which
yeah.
we've all done, you go in there and different people have different expectations.
Yes, they do.
So, we've talked about the preparation and stuff. What is the buyer's due diligence?
Well, whenever you're looking at buying a home and you've got an agent hopefully to help you in that process, because that can be a very stressful process as well as far as buying a home, you want to do what's called due diligence. You want to make sure that everything in that home is what's going on in that home. So what we do is sometimes I call it we're kind of like traffic directors. So we're like, if a roof needs to be looked at, we can help them get a list of people that takes professionals that looks at roofing, some roofers. And so if the HVAC unit, or if they're in need of, anything in the home, like home inspections, appraisals or whatever they may need, so we just try to kind of help point people in the right directions to the professional that can actually handle that. So when those contracts, Ryan takes care of, when we get down to that closing table, that client should know exactly what they're buying, and you want to make sure you do know that, because you don't want to, and there are things that do happen once you get in the house that was not foreseen, but you want to do your due diligence to, help that client and, to make sure they know, the most details about that house as they can.
So let's move forward, I guess, and talk about the closing process, both for the seller and the buyer. Ryan, what are some things that let's start with the seller, that they need to be aware of?
Sure. Well, Terry said, declutter and clean, and we can carry that over to the title. We want to make sure that the seller has a clean title to convey, and if there are mortgages on that, we're going to get a payoff, and we're going to make sure that's satisfied at the closing table. We're also going to look for other liens on the property, like a UCC1, which would be for an HVAC system, and we're going to make sure that's satisfied at closing. And then we go to judgment liens. If there are 3 or 4 Ryan Moores in town and there's a judgment lien against a Ryan Moore, but it's not the Ryan Moore that's selling, we're going to do a name affidavit, and we're going to say, hey, this is not the Ryan Moore who the judgment lien is against, and we're going to record that name affidavit with the warranty deed. So we're going going to make sure that title is clean and decluttered. Now, in addition, Terry was talking about due diligence. Many sellers will go ahead and spend the money for a new survey. They don't want any type of title problems down the road. Hey, I thought I bought this.
Absolutely.
It's on this, map and parcel number, but I didn't, convey this. So a survey is always a good idea as well. We're also going to look at who's going to pay closing cost, and sometimes we come to a standoff.
That's negotiable.
But it is negotiable, and the sellers have certain closing costs: the preparation of a warranty deed, sometimes the title policy. They'll also have costs associated with. We're doing a lot of remote closings, so the sellers live out of state, so they'll have courier fees and things like that. So we want to make sure everybody knows who's paying what, and we want to make sure at the closing table we can deliver good and marketable title.
Who is your client? Is it the seller? Is it the real estate agent? Is it the buyer? How does that work?
That's a great question. So in Tennessee, it is not a violation for an attorney to represent multiple parties because it is a transaction. It's transactional law and it's non-adversarial. So it's very common for one attorney to represent the buyer, the seller, and the lender if there's a loan involved.
Okay.
So yes.
Lots to think about with
It
that. Is there, as far as the buyer's perspective goes, you talked about the title, is there anything they need to consider?
Sure. So title insurance is always a great option that buyers, I think, need to take. It's an extra level of protection. No matter how good our abstract is, and our abstract's going to go back 30 years, if there was a misjudgment lien, if there was a missed payoff, if there was an error in some sort of conveyance, a break in the chain of title, that's going to protect that buyer. And basically the title insurance company says, okay, there was an error in the title work and we're going to indemnify and we're going to protect that buyer. We're going to make it right one way or the other.
Good to know.
Yes.
I had that happen on a home we bought. It was like 6 owners back. The title was not signed properly.
Right.
And so it kind of brought everything to a standstill until that could be taken care of by some of their heirs. So it's just things like that that you never consider.
And you bring up a good point, Karen. If we go back that far, we have to do deeds of correction to fix that break in the chain of title. Now, small errors, let's say a notary acknowledgement date or a minor error in the legal description or a misspelling of name, an attorney can correct that with a scrivener's affidavit and not have to involve the parties. So that's a good distinction.
Yeah. Terry, let's talk about, I guess I always think about home inspections and stuff. Is that something that is on, if you're representing the buyer, you recommend, or how does the inspection process work?
Well, that is going to be up to the seller, their lender, and they're going to talk about those kinds of things. Personally, I always want people to know what they're buying. So I want them to crawl under that house, and I'm not the best person at doing that. And so I want them, a trained professional, to get under there, look at the house, get up in the attic, and kind of pick that apart. I think that's in the best interest of clients. However, sometimes people waive those inspections. That is something that they can do, and they would. That's between. There's a team that really plays together. So you've got a real estate agent, you've got, on the listing and the buying side, you have, attorneys, you have title, you have someone who does surveys, you've got appraisers, lenders, inspections. So there's a big team that comes together to get this process done, and so, I would definitely say that, if it's a home that, you're definitely having some question about, definitely get the home inspection.
Yeah, I think sometimes even if it's just a few years old,
absolutely,
it never hurts
because
to
you
get
never
that.
know.
Right.
I know as a real estate agent, I've had people that has waived them, but I know I feel more comfortable when they get them, so they know exactly what it is they're buying.
And I bet Terry can attest to this. Terry, we've seen cases, especially recent, with it being such a hot market where, hey, we're going to waive all contingencies. We're going to waive the appraisal. We're going to waive the inspection. and we're ready to close. And Terry will probably agree with me. My dad has always said a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. So because we know that a home inspection can really delay a closing. Because what happens in a home inspection, and this has actually become a post-closing litigation issue, if there's a repair and replacement addendum that was addressed, and some of those repairs were not done, we've got a standoff. We've got an upset buyer who's going to go back on the seller, and in some cases go back on the real estate agent. Now, Tennessee has very good laws protecting realtors. They are agents, they're not certifying anything. They're going on what their client has told them. But anytime, I think, and Terry, you'll probably agree with me, that we can waive some of those contingencies, from a closing standpoint, it's a much smoother process. And Karen, what we do in that regard, we're going to say, okay, we're going to sign a property disclaimer act, which says that we're buying this property as is, with no express or implied warranties except to that of good title.
Okay, so yeah, you're to move forward, and like you said, there's multiple offers on homes these days, and the minimum amount of barriers you can put up, the better. But we have to protect ourselves as the buyer to be ready to take on that burden of, yes, I've acknowledged that the roof is bad and I'm going to have to replace that, and that's on me,
Yeah, and just being aware, like Ron said, just being aware of what you're buying and what you're getting and how, and it is so competitive, and sometimes waiving that is sometimes the only way that they're going to get the house, so you got to weigh all your options, and that's why putting that team together that you trust, that you seek their advice, and putting a team together is always so beneficial.
I will ask too, I'm with two experts here as far as real estate goes. A lot of people think they can do this themselves, and tell me, I guess, what all a real estate person brings to the table that me, just as a person who sticks a for sale sign in their yard, doesn't know.
Yeah, that's a good question on the for sale by owners. And yes, it can be done. I've sold property. Ron may have too. A lot of people have sold property on their own. Again, you need to definitely seek an attorney to make sure all the title and everything is good and clear. But I think what helps is like the real estate agent comes, and I think brings valuable knowledge of the market as far as like researching. So I have seen for sale by owners underprice their houses, and because they don't know, they don't research, or maybe not able to research, maybe what their home is, going for, like, what's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, brick home going for in this neighborhood. So when we go to that client and we will look at, like, we call it a CMA, it's a comparative market analysis, and sometimes you'll hear the word comps, but sometimes just to break it down even simpler, I'll say, let me go do the math, because really that's kind of what it is. So I go back on those and I look and I research that area, so they'll know, like, what's things selling for in your neighborhood, what did they close at, were they any expired, what's under contract, how long did it stay on the market, what is the price per square foot. And so we take all that information in, and look at that and try to just give that client some advice on, you looks like you can fall within this range or this range, but ultimately it's their choice. It's their home to choose kind of, the price range that they need to be at or whatever.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, as a homeowner, you kind of tend to overvalue your home a lot of times because your memories and all your warm fuzzies are there. How do you come to an agreement, or where does the price come from?
Yeah, well, and that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that question. And so you're exactly right. We all think our home is, valuable, and it is valuable. And so what I do, and what I think other real estate agents do as well, is we print off that market analysis and just kind of show that to them, to show them, okay, so here's a home that has 2 acres, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath. It's just down the street. It sold for this back a month ago. So I was in a class last week, and they said right now, because the market is just so kind of crazy, people were going back 6 months to see what a house sold for, and they're saying if you can go back a month, that is probably going to be your most accurate. Actually extend your search. just your distance on that search a little bit more instead of time wise. Instead of going back 3 months, try to do the distance in that, because I think you'd get something more accurate. So I'm going to give them that analysis, and we're going to just talk that over and look at that. Now, reality is, people has payoffs on, they have lands and everything on there, they're wanting to go to a certain place, and, they're going to need a certain amount to do that. And so we just try to look at that whole big picture. But at the end of the day, I just tell my clients, I didn't buy this house. I didn't pay for this house. This is yours. And so we'll give you some advice. We'll give you some suggestions. We'll tell you what pricing it, what it looks like or whatever, just an evaluation. Now, we're definitely not appraisers, so don't mix that up. We're definitely not appraisers, but we'll just kind of give you an idea, maybe a range from here to here, and then at the end of the day, we let our clients kind of take the wheel a little bit on that. And so we also talk to them about when you put your house out on the market, what happens if you overprice it. Well, if you overprice it, I can tell you that, we can advise them, if you overprice the house and you try to shoot for a little bit more, I don't blame you, but it could sit on the market for a while. And if you're in a hurry, so you got to be strategic, and you got to have someone that knows how to win in this market and can get you to the end and get you to that closing table and give you the best advice possible.
Ron, you've come from a long line of real estate family and been in this for years. What do you think is driving the market? What is it that lately it's such a hot commodity?
Yeah, so many people want to come to Tennessee.
Yeah.
We're having title orders where the buyers are even purchasing these homes sight unseen.
Yeah.
Terry mentioned that 3D walkthrough, and I think people are wanting to come to Tennessee. It's a slower pace of living. It's a cheaper cost of living. Our property taxes are a lot less than other states. And it's been exciting to see when, we can put a deal together and see a family from Wisconsin. I've got some neighbors that just moved here from Wisconsin, Colorado, California, Texas, and they're just so happy to be in Tennessee. And and in that case, they're always going to have a realtor, because they're going to need that expertise, somebody that's, has their hands on deck. And another good thing about a realtor is they're familiar with the lingo. Terry has, these great real estate contracts that title lawyers are accustomed to seeing. We know what to look for. She knows, she can explain to the buyers and seller, hey, what's the difference in a right of first refusal versus an option? What's going to trigger a home inspection? On this repair and replacement addendum, repair or replace, a realtor can really provide, I think, a lot of valuable insight. And at the end of the day, worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. Worth that percentage that, everybody's got to have their part of making and that kind of thing. That's what makes everybody wants to. Yes, that's right. That's right. Well, thank you both for being on the show. So informative. I know a lot of people are considering buying and selling. I will throw in there is land itself going just as quickly, I guess, as homes are.
It is.
I think so, because I've had real estate agents saying, oh my goodness, the land is going like crazy.
And Karen, it's hard to find a piece of 5 acres anymore that's not been busted up. So, I mean, if you can find those 5-acre tracts, what used to be a commodity is now a rarity.
Yeah, I was working with a real estate agent that does a lot of land the other day, and that's exactly what he was saying. He's like, I cannot find a 5-acre tract.
Yes.
And this is like the first time in years that I have not been able to find a 5-acre tract. So if you find that and you really like that, we have this thing in real estate that says time is of the essence, but I always tell them time is not your friend sometimes in real estate. So sometimes you got to jump on it and you got to do it quickly. So,
to that, Terry, Terry can enter what's called an options contract. And an options contract says, hey, we're going to pay the seller a sum of money, for in consideration of $5,000. We're going to pay the seller to take this land off the market so we can do our due diligence. Now, that's different than a right of first refusal. That option contract is going to favor the seller always. That earnest money is not going to come back. Where a right of first refusal says, hey, we're going to keep this on the market, but if we have a higher offer, Terry's client gets that right of first refusal. So the option contract, that land goes off the market 60, 90 days. The buyer says yay or nay. The seller retains that money. On a right of first refusal, if Terry's client rejects that right of first refusal, then they've lost it forever.
Okay, a lot to think
Yes.
about.
Yeah.
Lots of family farms and land tracts
Yeah.
out there that
Yes.
people are, instead of selling it to other farmers these days, you're seeing a lot of houses being built on them.
Right.
So,
And Karen, in that regard, we'll see exclusions. Let's say we have a 100-acre farm and we're selling it off in, 5-acre tracts. Well, when you have a certain number of outsells, we need to get a resurvey for the whole property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, included but accepted or we just need a
Yeah,
good
because
legal
each
description.
track, I guess, can have its own things that go along with
Absolutely.
it. Okay.
And, on these old family farms, there were, not even a meets and bounds survey, so the survey should be updated regardless.
Okay. So much good
Yes.
information.
So much, yeah.
Thank you. We'll have to come back. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we want the market to stay hot
Yeah.
and moving and people to move into the area. So thank you both for coming
You're
on the
welcome.
show
Thank you for having
today.
us.
Yeah. And I'll say thank you to the audience too for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show today. We want you to have a safe, healthy, and happy week and join us again next week for more Table Talk.